Forsyth pointed a handgun at them and he said, "Hey, big lads, don't move." It's 9 people held at gunpoint. Good morning. Welcome to Belfast. Delighted that you're here, and welcome to DC Tours. My name's Paul Donnelly. I'm going to be your guide this morning. What we're going to do is take a walk through the city centre streets, visiting 7 sites. We start here at our City Hall, and we finish down at the end of this street at Oxford Street, the Waterfront Plaza. It's a lovely setting to draw the tour to conclusion. On a day like this, we'll have the River Lagan sparkling in the Belfast sunshine, and I don't always get to say that, so if it happens, savour that moment. Where we're standing now, this used to be the old Dutch department store, C&A, and on the 2 floors above were a nightclub called the Celeb Club. The Celeb Club was a Belfast institution. It opened on a Sunday evening. Belfast had a very strong Scottish Presbyterian history. Up until the late 1980s, on a Sunday, downtown Belfast was closed, but the Celeb Club defied this convention. And because it was an accessible site on a Sunday evening, it attracted people from all over the city, from both nationalist and unionist neighbourhoods. It was a shared space in the city centre. It was attacked by the Provisional IRA as part of their economic bombing campaign in October 1971. And guys, I stress, this is a tiny incident. This is not a bloody Sunday or an Oma bomb. This was a snowflake in an avalanche. On the evening, the club was filled to capacity when an IRA unit pulled up outside here in a vehicle, a blue Ford Cortina, 4 occupants, and which included 2 19-year-old men, Martin Forsyth and Patrick Shannon, and an 18-year-old woman called Patricia Murray. Murray and Forsyth were armed with handguns. They held at gunpoint 2 members of door staff and 5 young women who were chatting to them as they paid to go into the club. Shannon had a wooden box and he produced from it a 20-pound bomb, and he started to prime that device for explosion. And as he was doing so, we know this from the coroner's inquest, an elevator came from upstairs. 2 guys went to step out of it. Forsyth pointed a handgun at them and he said, "Hey, big lads, don't move." It's 9 people held at gunpoint. The bomb was successfully primed. They ran towards their getaway vehicle. Forsyth uttered a verbal warning about nobody was to follow them for 5 minutes or they'd be effing blasted. But as this was happening, the 2 big guys who'd come down in the lift, they came running out behind them, carrying handguns, and they revealed themselves to be undercover police officers from the Royal Ulster Constabulary. So guys, we're standing outside the Cotswold shop and the Liverpool FC supporters shop. This was originally the site of the Abercorn Bar and Restaurant, and an incident happened here on Saturday the 4th of March 1972, which profoundly affected this city and virtually every community within it. A 5-pound shrapnel bomb packed with metal shrapnel exploded in the downstairs restaurant, which was a very popular venue with women and children. 137 people hospitalised, multiple loss of limbs, people totally blinded by the explosion, and 2 young Catholic women on this occasion died in the immediacy of the event. The Abercorn explosion had a huge number of traumatic human impacts, that's quite evident, but it also led to a secret dialogue process between the British government and the IRA. It is one of the key events in the early days of the Troubles. It has the human trauma that it produces, but it had huge political impacts, which would become incredibly important later on. One of the things I always say about the Abercorn was it affected an entire city. It didn't matter if you lived in a unionist or a nationalist neighbourhood, people could see the victims of the Abercorn in their everyday lives, a profound effect. And this is one of the key issues that we address in DC Tours, not just what happened and how it came about, but the legacies that it still leaves us today. And one of the things I always point out about the Abercorn, it's a shared experience, a shared trauma. There's absolutely nothing to tell you what happened here. There is no form of commemoration or memorialisation. In our communities, unionist and nationalist, we have gardens of remembrance, we have the content of murals, we have commemorative parades, but they're loyalist or Republican. In the city centre, where huge traumas were experienced, because it's a shared space, because it's technically neutral, we're afraid to commemorate the past in case we impact negatively on a very fragile neutrality. So in a sense, there's a trauma out there which is not being addressed. Okay guys, obviously DC Tours, A History of Terror, deals with some dark material and difficult material, but it's a city of great richness and vibrancy, and sometimes we like to bring a little light relief and can focus upon that. So this sculpture behind us here was created in 2007 and placed here in 2009. It's called the Spirit of Belfast. It was created by an American sculptor called Dan George. And what it represents are two of our great industries that helped build Belfast. Shipbuilding, that's the big famous one, but also the steel is curved to represent the looming process of linen. Linen actually built Belfast before shipbuilding did. So the Spirit of Belfast, but we stress, unfortunately very few people in the city get how it encapsulates the Spirit of Belfast in any meaningful way. So to make sense of it, it's known locally as the onion rings. It's a big plate of onion rings. January 1971, the Provisional IRA declared operations against British soldiers. They killed their first 3 soldiers in February 71, all in sniper attacks where there were riot situations in Catholic communities. However, an incident happens in the building behind us, or starts in the building behind us, on Wednesday the 10th of March 1971, which sees an absolute escalation of the IRA's campaign against British soldiers. British soldiers, when off duty, could get a 6-hour permission pass to leave their barracks to go into city centres. At the time, the army authorities believed if they were out of uniform, unarmed and not on duty, they would have civilian status. But the Provisional IRA had been watching British soldiers, often drinking in bars, unarmed, and decided this was too easy a target to miss the opportunity. And they set out to identify off-duty soldiers. And it wasn't rocket science. These guys came from Glasgow, Liverpool, Newcastle upon Tyne. They had short military haircuts in an era where most of us had long hair because we were still listening to Led Zeppelin and Deep Purple. And in Mooneys Silver Bar and Grill, as it was behind us, on the 10th of March 71, 3 young Scottish soldiers entered the premises enjoying an afternoon out. Several hours later, their bodies were found on the northern hills of the city. All 3 had been shot dead. Beer glasses beside them, it appeared they were urinating at the side of the country road. Never been a prosecution. And the belief is that IRA members gained their confidence, were drinking with them and lured them to their deaths with an invite to a party where there were young women going to be present. And the deaths of the 3 soldiers, two of whom, the McCaig brothers, were only 17 and 18, had a hugely traumatic emotional effect and a traumatic political impact. The IRA's war against British soldiers was now 24/7. Belfast is obviously famous for its murals. Street art in Belfast is changing, and nowhere is this more evident than in the city centre in areas such as the Cathedral Quarter where we are now. Belfast still slightly has the whiff of cordite. It's slightly risque. If you want to be the next Banksy, Belfast is a canvas in which you can establish your credentials. And we have artists coming from Colombia, we have artists from Australia, and on this occasion, an artist, MTO, from France, who painted this back around 2000, 2013, 2014, the son of Protagoras. There's a tale to that. I'm not going to tell you the tale now. You have to come along, take our tour to find out more about it. But what it does do is it looks at conflict, it looks at religious identity and religious and political influence in a way that is very different to how we have done it in the past, because this is a different set of eyes, different ears, and a different message. Literally standing in the middle of Hill Street in the Cathedral Quarter. The Cathedral Quarter was a name and a terminology you wouldn't have heard 20 years ago. This area was historically the half-bap and Little Italy, leading up into North Belfast behind us. A population centre that once upon a time was predominantly Catholic. There were Catholic streets within this area and a Catholic community. We, on this part of the tour, focus on Commemeration. We've talked about the lack thereof at previous points, but here at the site of the Old Hart Bar, we have a commemoration to punk rock. The endeavours of Terri Hooley as he promoted the undertones, stiff little fingers, the defects, and it was a social phenomenon in Belfast that broke down sectarian boundaries. We're very keen to emphasise that. However, the Hart Bar was also the site of a loyalist gun and bomb attack in August 1975 that saw civilian casualties, including 2 deaths. And one of those who died, one of the legacies of his death was through organ donation. Other people had their lives saved. It's a really powerful story, and yet there's nothing to commemorate that event. I'm a huge fan of the commemoration of punk because it was socially very, very positive. But we have an issue here of why do we commemorate one issue and we don't commemorate another? And the sad answer is we haven't got to grips with certain aspects of our past. Okay guys, we're now standing at the Waterfront Plaza on Oxford Street. As I predicted earlier on, we're lucky today. We do have the River Lagan sparkling in the Belfast sunshine. We're standing under one of the most famous sculptures in the city, formerly called the Beacon of Hope, holding the Ring of Thanksgiving, but known colloquially by a whole variety of nicknames. Nuala with the hula, the thing with the ring, the doll on the ball, Janet on the planet. We do like our nicknames and slightly taking the pomposity out of public art in Belfast. But it's also the site along Oxford Street of another cataclysmic event on Friday the 21st of July 1972, a day of a massive car bomb attack on the city involving up to 23 car bombs, a day of horrible death and civilian casualty and other casualties. And guys, it's an event that following Bloody Sunday, Bloody Friday as this becomes known, really changes the dynamic of the conflict here, and we go into the elongated period that some have called the Long War. So at this site we trace that journey from horrendous events of this nature and how we actually got the ceasefires in '94, how we got the negotiated 8-party two-government settlement, the Good Friday Agreement in 1998, and where we are today in that ongoing process. But certainly a process where I often say to people, here's our conclusion. You're here today, you've come from the Netherlands, you've come from Japan, Australia, Southern America. It's absolutely testament to the journey that Belfast has undertaken that we can stand in the public domain in a city which is still raw, talking about these events, but how we got out of the mire and where we are today. I hope this little taster this morning has given you some incentive to engage with DC Tours or to come to the city of Belfast. We look at dark matters in the conflict, how it came about, what it was like to live here at the time, and how we've emerged to where we are today. So it's a story of positivity. If you want to book a DC tour, go to www.deadcentretours.com. We also have a Best of Belfast tour. We can do tailor-made tours for your educational group, your family, or whatever group you're in. And guys, we also have available at our website self-guided audio tours, which are wonderful, different way of experiencing our city. Please come and visit. Thank you.